First contact. The ship's artificial gravity flickered as the horizon entered Nixia's atmospheric boundary. Dr. Elian Reeves gripped his console, the data streams blurring before his eyes. After 3 years in deep space, they had finally arrived at humanity's most distant contact yet. Stabilization in 5 seconds, announced Commander Wei over the comm. All department heads prepare for approach protocol. Elian straightened his uniform and checked his translation device one last time. As the ship's xenolinguist, first contact fell squarely on his shoulders, a responsibility he had trained 15 years for. The device contained every known translation algorithm, but Elian doubted its effectiveness with the Lunari, whose existence they'd only confirmed through distant transmissions. "Nervous, Doc?" asked Talia, the ship's exobiologist, sliding into the seat beside him. Her easy smile contrasted with the tension in the command center. "Professionally curious," he replied with practiced detachment. Elian had built a career on maintaining emotional distance, a necessity his mentors had insisted, for objective linguistic analysis. The view screen illuminated with swirling violet clouds as they descended through Nixia's upper atmosphere. Below, crystalline structures caught the light of the planet's twin suns, creating prismatic patterns across the landscape. When they landed in the designated clearing, Elian was the third to exit, behind Commander Wei and Security Chief DeMarco. The air carried a faint scent of ozone and something sweeter, like jasmine after rain. The Lunari delegation approached slowly from a shimmering structure at the edge of the clearing. Their movements were fluid, almost like dance, and their skin, Elian blinked in surprise. Their skin pulsed with subtle patterns of light beneath a translucent purple surface. The delegation leader stepped forward, slightly taller than the others. Her form was humanoid, with graceful limbs and features that seemed almost sculpted. But it was her eyes that caught Elian's attention, iridescent and depthless, like galaxies suspended in violet pools. "I am Mira, voice of the Eastern Settlement," she said in perfect standard English, though her lips barely moved. Instead, the lights beneath her skin pulsed in rhythm with each syllable. Commander Wei performed the formal greeting they had rehearsed, while Elian observed the subtle communication happening between the Lunari, flashes of light passing between them. Almost too quick to register. When his turn came, Elian stepped forward, translation device ready. "I am Dr. Elian Reeves, linguistics specialist. We are honored by your welcome." Mira tilted her head, studying him with those galaxy eyes. "Your device is unnecessary, Dr. Reeves. We have studied your transmissions for many cycles." As she reached to indicate his translator, the ship's stabilizers compensated for Nixia's lower gravity, causing a momentary shift. Elian stumbled forward, his hand accidentally brushing against Mira's arm. The contact lasted barely a second, but it sent an electric sensation coursing through him. Not painful, but intensely intimate, as though someone had suddenly whispered directly into his consciousness. Mira's eyes widened, the lights beneath her skin pulsing rapidly in patterns of gold and azure. The other Lunari stepped back, their own light patterns flickering in what Elian recognized as alarm. "I apologize for the contact," he said quickly, heart racing. It was unintentional, but Mira wasn't offended. Instead, a smile curved her lips as the lights beneath her skin settled into a steady, warm glow. She leaned slightly closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that seemed to bypass his ears and resonate directly in his mind. "Do it again," she said simply. In that moment, standing beneath alien suns with the taste of ozone in the air, Elian felt something crack in the careful professional distance he had maintained for years. Something ancient and forgotten stirred in response to that simple request, a reminder that before humans had words, they too had communicated through touch. Either resonant frequencies. 3 weeks after first contact, the research base Harmony Point hummed with activity at the edge of the Lunari settlement. Elian sat cross-legged opposite Mira in the designated communication lab, surrounded by monitoring equipment that tracked their interactions with clinical precision. "Your colleagues watch us very carefully," Mira observed, her purple skin shimmering with amusement patterns that Elian was slowly learning to interpret. They fear what they don't understand. They're scientists, Elian replied, adjusting the neural sensors at his temples. And what happened when we first touched was unprecedented. What he didn't say was how that brief contact had changed him. Since that moment, he'd experienced heightened sensitivity to electromagnetic fields, occasional flashes of emotion that weren't his own, and dreams filled with landscapes he'd never seen. Today, we will try something more structured, Mira explained. If you are willing, Commander Wei's voice came through Elian's earpiece. Remember protocol, Doctor. Observational data only. Elian nodded, though a part of him had grown increasingly frustrated with the clinical approach to what felt like something profound. He extended his hands, palms up, as Mira had instructed. The resonance requires intent, she said, her voice soft as she placed her hands above his, not quite touching. We call it Nvala, the willing bridge between minds. When her palms finally lowered to meet his, the connection was immediate but gentler than before. Instead of the overwhelming surge of their accidental first contact, this felt like stepping into warm water, the sensation rising gradually around him. Elian's scientific training urged him to catalog the experience, the slight elevation in body temperature, the tingling at the base of his skull, the curious sensation of his heartbeat synchronizing with hers. But those clinical observations quickly gave way to something else entirely. Images formed in his mind, crystal forests catching prismatic light, underwater caverns glowing with bioluminescent patterns, and the sensation of gliding through Nixia's low gravity with joy pulsing through every molecule. These are your memories, he whispered, eyes closed to better focus on the experience. Yes, Mira's voice seemed to come from both outside and within him. And this is how we learn, how we preserve our history, how we know each other. Elian felt a gentle probing, like fingers leafing through pages. May I? Her voice asked within his mind. He hesitated only briefly before mentally nodding. Memories surfaced, his childhood in the biodomes of Mars Colony, the day he discovered his passion for language, the lonely years of study, and the mixture of pride and isolation that had defined his adult life. When their hands finally separated, Elian found himself blinking back tears. The monitoring equipment beeped frantically, recording spikes across all his neural pathways. Dr. Reeves, your readings are concerning, Commander Wei's voice crackled. We're ending today's session, but Elian barely heard her. He was looking at Mira, whose galaxy eyes reflected understanding that no human had ever shown him. You have been alone for so long, she said. Not as a question, but as a simple truth she had witnessed firsthand. We all are. In some ways, he replied, suddenly aware of how true that was for his species. Humans, we've forgotten how to truly connect. Perhaps you can remember, she said, the lights beneath her skin shifting to a warm, violet hue that he now recognized as hope. Later that night, reviewing the session data alone in his quarters, Elian made a decision. He deactivated the neural monitors that transmitted his readings to the research database. What was happening between him and Mira felt too important, too sacred, to be reduced to data points and scientific analysis. For the first time in his career, he would keep the most significant discovery to himself. Shadows of distrust. The Council has concerns, said Ambassador Chen, her hologram flickering slightly in the communication room of Harmony Point. Some of your colleagues report unusual behavior. Dr. Reeves, Elian maintained a carefully neutral expression. 6 weeks into the mission, the daily resonance sessions with Mira had become the center of his existence, and apparently, the subject of growing concern. My work requires immersion in Lunari communication methods, he replied. Their touch-based resonance can't be understood without experiencing it. There's a difference between research and attachment. The ambassador's pause was heavy with implication. Security Officer DeMarco reports you've been spending off-duty hours in the Lunari settlement, without monitoring equipment. Behind the ambassador, Elian could see the members of Earth's Interspecies Relations Committee, their expressions ranging from scientific curiosity to unmistakable suspicion. The Lunari don't separate knowledge from experience, Elian explained, feeling a familiar frustration. Their entire understanding of the universe is participatory. To truly comprehend their language, We understand your scientific dedication, interrupted Dr. Samuels, the neurologist on the committee. But our scans show concerning changes in your neural patterns. The lunari resonance appears to be rewiring your synaptic connections. The accusation hung in the air. Was he being influenced, even controlled? The meeting ended with a temporary restriction on unsupervised contact and mandatory daily neural scans. Elian left the communication room to find Talia waiting outside. They're implementing security protocols, she said quietly. DeMarco's team will be monitoring all human-lunari interactions. This is exactly what we promised wouldn't happen, Elian replied, anger tightening his chest. It's not just Earth, Talia continued, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. Something's happening on the lunari side, too. There was a gathering at the Central Crystal Temple yesterday. Mira wasn't allowed to attend. That evening, Elian found Mira waiting at their usual meeting place by the boundary between the research base and the settlement. The usual warmth of her light patterns was muted, tinged with darker pulses that suggested concern. My elders believe I have shared too much, she said without preamble.
They fear what humans might do with knowledge of resonance. My people fear the same about your abilities, Elian replied, maintaining the prescribed 2-meter distance between them.
For a moment, they simply looked at each other across that carefully measured gap, both aware of the unseen observers monitoring their interaction. They say resonance with another species risks contamination, Mira continued, her voice lower, that I may lose my connection to the collective consciousness of our people. Elian's heart sank. Is that true? I don't know, she admitted. No lunari has ever formed a sustained resonance bond with a non-lunari before. A pattern of determination flickered across her skin. But I know what I've experienced with you isn't wrong. A warning light flashed on Elian's wristband. His neural activity was spiking beyond acceptable parameters, simply from this conversation. They're going to separate us, he realized aloud. Before Mira could respond, a tremor shook the ground beneath them. Alarm signals blared from both the human base and the lunari settlement. Seismic activity in Sector 4, announced the base AI. All personnel report to emergency stations. As they turned toward their respective communities, Mira quickly reached across the boundary, her fingers brushing Elian's wrist. The contact lasted less than a second, but the message transferred was clear, coordinates and a time. Tonight, the Crystal Caves. No monitoring there. As he ran toward the research base, Elian made his decision. Some discoveries were worth the risk of disobedience. Some connections transcended protocol. And some bridges, once built between souls, could not be dismantled by fear. Forbidden resonance. The crystal caves beneath Nixia's eastern plateau pulsed with their own inner light, casting prismatic shadows that danced across the walls. Elian navigated through narrow passages, having disabled his location tracker and neural monitors before slipping away during the confusion of the seismic event. The deeper he went, the stronger he felt a curious pull, almost as if Mira's consciousness was reaching for his, drawing him forward through the labyrinthine tunnels. He found her in a chamber where crystal formations created a natural amphitheater around a pool of luminescent liquid. Her purple skin seemed to absorb and reflect the ambient light, making her appear almost ethereal. "You came," she said, relief evident in both her voice and the brightening patterns beneath her skin. "Did you doubt I would?" Elian moved closer, no longer constrained by arbitrary safety protocols. "The elders have declared you Vaishera, potential contaminant." Her expression remained serene despite the gravity of her words. "They believe prolonged resonance with humans could destabilize our collective consciousness." "Earth's scientists believe much the same about me," Elian replied with a wry smile. "According to their scans, my neural pathways are reorganizing in patterns they don't recognize." Mira approached slowly, her eyes searching his. "And does this frighten you?" "It should," he admitted. "But instead, I feel more awakened, as if parts of my brain that were dormant are finally active." She nodded, understanding. "The ancient texts speak of this, Nivala Ashir, the transformation that comes from deep resonance. but it was believed possible only between Lunari. They stood at the edge of the luminescent pool, its surface reflecting their figures, one human, one Lunari, yet the differences between them seemed increasingly superficial compared to the connection they shared. "What happens now?" Elian asked, his voice barely above a whisper. In answer, Mira extended both hands toward him. "Now we choose. We can respect the boundaries our people have established, or we can discover what happens when resonance grows beyond brief contact." Her galaxy eyes held his. "But you should understand, this may change you in ways that cannot be undone." Elian thought of Earth, of his colleagues, of the career he had built around objective observation and clinical detachment. Then he looked at Mira and saw something he had been searching for his entire life without realizing it, genuine connection that transcended words. He took her hands in his. The resonance began gently, like their previous sessions, but quickly deepened beyond anything they had experienced before. The boundaries between their minds dissolved until Elian couldn't distinguish his thoughts from hers. Memories flowed freely, childhood joys, adolescent sorrows, adult discoveries, all shared with perfect clarity and acceptance. But beneath the exchange of memories lay something more profound. The rhythms of their very beings began to synchronize. Elian felt his consciousness expand beyond the limitations of his physical form, while simultaneously experiencing the curious sensation of Mira's bioelectric field merging with his own. "This is how we truly know each other," Mira's thoughts whispered through him. Not just memories, but essence. They remained connected for hours, losing all sense of time as they explored this new realm of shared consciousness. Through Mira, Elian experienced the Lunari collective mind, a vast, harmonious network of interconnected awareness that spanned generations. Through Elian, Mira felt the unique human experience of individual identity, the beauty and loneliness of singular consciousness. When they finally separated, Elian noticed the changes immediately. His perception had altered. He could see the subtle electromagnetic fields surrounding living things, could sense the emotional states of nearby creatures without physical contact. Most significantly, he could still feel Mira's presence in his mind, a gentle resonance that persisted even without touch. "We've formed Kanathava," she explained, awe in her voice. "A permanent bridge. This has never happened between species before." As dawn approached, they reluctantly prepared to return to their respective communities, knowing their absence had surely been noted. "They'll try to separate us now," Elian said, the concern in his voice tempered by the certainty that no physical distance could sever what they now shared. Mira's skin pulsed with determination. "Then we must show them what can be gained when differences are bridged rather than feared." They emerged from the crystal caves to find Nixia's twin suns rising over the horizon, and the silhouettes of both human and Lunari search. Parties converging on their location. Harmonic convergence. Neural tampering, Dr. Samuels declared, reviewing Elian's scans with barely concealed alarm. "Your frontal cortex is showing activity patterns consistent with Lunari physiology." 3 days had passed since Elian and Mira had been discovered returning from the crystal caves. 3 days of isolation in the medical bay, subjected to endless tests and interrogations. 3 days separated from Mira by physical barriers, though their mental connection remained, a quiet hum of awareness that the human scientists couldn't detect or understand. "It's not tampering," Elian replied calmly. "It's adaptation, evolution even." Commander Wei paced the small room. "You violated direct orders, compromised the mission parameters, and potentially exposed humanity to unknown risks. Or discovered the most significant breakthrough in interspecies communication in human history," Elian countered. Through his newly enhanced perception, he could sense the mixture of fear, curiosity, and concern emanating from the commander. "The Lunari Council has requested your permanent removal from Nixia," Wei continued. "They claim you've disrupted their societal harmony." Elian smiled slightly, drawing on Mira's knowledge flowing through their connection. "No, they haven't. That's a misrepresentation from Elder Varan, who speaks only for the conservative faction. I can sense Mira right now. She's addressing the full council, challenging their assumptions." Wei and Samuels exchanged worried glances. This is exactly why they're concerned, Samuel said. You're claiming to psychically communicate with... The ground beneath them shuddered violently, cutting off his words. Alarms blared throughout the research base. Major seismic event detected, announced the AI. Structural integrity compromised in sectors 7 through 12. Lunari settlement sustaining significant damage. Through their connection, Elian felt Mira's sudden panic, not for herself, but for the crystal temple where many Lunari had gathered for council proceedings. He saw through her eyes as massive crystal formations began to fracture, threatening to collapse on those below. Without hesitation, Elian pushed past Way and Samuels, running toward the exit. "Reeves!" we shouted. "You're not authorized. The temple is collapsing," Elian called back. "They need help evacuating." Outside, chaos reigned as both humans and Lunari struggled to maintain footing on the trembling ground. Guided by his connection with Mira, Elian ran directly toward the crystal temple, a massive structure now fracturing along its eastern face. Inside, he found Mira organizing evacuations, her light patterns pulsing with urgent commands that other Lunari responded to instantly. "The resonance chamber is blocked," she told him, both verbally and mentally. 17 elders are trapped inside, including those who opposed our connection. Elian reached for her hand, strengthening their bond through direct contact. Through their shared consciousness, they mapped the temple's unstable areas, feeling the subtle vibrations that preceded each collapse. "We need to synchronize," Elian suggested, an idea forming between their joined minds. "If we can harmonize our bioelectric fields with the crystal frequencies, we might stabilize the structure long enough for evacuation," Mira finished. "But it would require extending our resonance field beyond anything attempted before." They moved to the center of the temple, where the largest crystal formation anchored the entire structure. Surrounded by bewildered Lunari and the few human rescue personnel who had arrived, Elian and Mira pressed their palms against the crystal's surface. Their joined consciousness expanded outward, sensing the unique vibration of each crystal, the stress points where fractures were imminent. Together, they generated a countering resonance, Mira providing the knowledge of crystal harmonics, Elian contributing the focused intensity that humans had evolved through their isolation. A visible wave of energy rippled through the temple as their combined resonance field stabilized the failing structure. The violent trembling subsided to a manageable vibration, creating a window for evacuation. "Get them out now," Elian shouted to the rescue teams, maintaining his connection to both Mira and the crystal matrix through sheer will. As the last elder was carried from the resonance chamber, Elian felt his strength wavering. The effort of projecting such an expanded field was draining his energy rapidly. Beside him, Mira's purple skin had dimmed, the light patterns flowing sluggishly. "We need to release," she whispered, her mental voice growing faint. With a final surge of shared effort, they directed the resonance field to guide the temple's collapse away from escape routes before breaking their connection to the crystal. They stumbled outside just as the magnificent structure folded in on itself, crystal spires shattering with sounds like massive wind chimes. In the days that followed, everything changed. The elders who had experienced firsthand the life-saving potential of human Lunari resonance could no longer dismiss it as contamination. The human scientists, confronted with data from the event that showed how Elian and Mira's synchronized fields had temporarily stabilized an entire geological fault line, began to reconsider their fears. 1 month after the earthquake, Elian stood with Mira at a new structure being raised on the site of the fallen temple, a collaborative project that incorporated both human engineering and Lunari crystal harmonics. "The horizon returns to Earth next week," Elian said, watching humans and Lunari working side by side. "They've requested that I lead the diplomatic delegation back." Mira's light patterns shifted to a question. "And what did you tell them?" "That I go where you go," he replied simply. "Our resonance has opened possibilities neither of our species imagined. We're the bridge." Her galaxy eyes met his, a smile forming. "The elders have approved my request to establish a resonance training program for interested humans. They're calling it the Harmonic Initiative. Around them, the first foundation crystals of the new structure began to pulse with light. Not the pure tones of traditional Lunari architecture, but a more complex harmony that incorporated new frequencies. "Do you regret it?" Mira asked, her fingers intertwining with his. The changes, the way you're caught between worlds now? Elian thought of how far they'd come from that first accidental touch, when a simple do it again had set them on this path. He reached out through their permanent connection, sharing his answer directly from mind to mind, a symphony of emotion that needed no words. Some distances were never meant to remain uncrossed. Some differences existed, not as barriers, but as complementary notes in a greater harmony. And some connections, once formed, became the foundation for entirely new worlds of possibility. As if in answer, the crystals around them resonated with their combined frequency, unique in all the universe, yet somehow perfectly at home on this distant world beneath alien suns.